There are a lot of platform choices that are available to you on social media. So many so that it might feel overwhelming sometimes. And so today, as Derek mentioned, we're going to focus on two that, at least in my opinion, are most likely to provide the best value for you and give you the biggest bang for your buck as a faculty member or a member of the community on social media. And those two platforms are Twitter and LinkedIn. So to kick things off, I'm about to share a couple of goals that you might be interested in as you sort of take on these platforms. So I always think it's important to start with your why. Whether you are looking to join one of these platforms or you're already on them, but you're looking to take your presence to the next level, in order to use social media in an intentional and a productive way, it's going to be really important to go in with a goal or an objective in mind. And having goals for what you want to accomplish on social media is going to help you determine what to post. It's going to help you determine who to follow, which actions and tactics you want to use, and which of these social networks are going to be the right fit. It's also going to save you a lot of time by keeping your goal in mind so that you can focus on what's important and not get too lost in the weeds of all of the very many distractions that social media can present. So let's talk about some common goals, all of which I think can be accomplished using Twitter and or LinkedIn. And if you attended my previous Digital Commons presentation, this next slide might look a little bit familiar, but I always think it's really important to reinforce your why in order to be more purposeful. So starting with its ability to bring more attention to and a greater understanding of the work that you're doing, that may be a goal that you have in mind. By creating your own space online that you own, you can create sort of a digital home base where you can represent yourself in the ways that you want, talk and present your work in the ways that you want, and have this space where anyone can sort of find and learn more about you. You may also be interested in appearing higher in your personal search results. These are major websites that are great for your SEO, your search engine optimization, so that when you are being searched, content that you own shows up high in those rankings. You might be someone who is more interested in becoming popular and well-known as an expert or a thought leader, and these networks can help provide you with a really solid foundation to establish yourself in those ways. Maybe you are someone who is looking to enhance your professional network. We're going to talk a lot about that today. Maybe you're looking for new projects or collaborations to take on. Twitter and LinkedIn both have fabulous tools that we're going to look at to help connect you with some of those possible collaborators. And then maybe you are someone who is looking to join conversations at in-person events or other conferences. You can use these platforms to connect with attendees or speakers and to continue conversations and sessions after the event has ended. And you may also want to be keeping up with developments in your field. Oftentimes, the professional organizations and news and leaders that you follow in your professional lives often have accounts on either one or both of these platforms. Or maybe you just heard that Twitter and LinkedIn are fun spaces and you want to check out what the hype is all about, and that can also be true. So keep in mind what you're looking to do, have sort of some combination of what you think your goals are on these platforms as we move forward through this presentation. Keep those in the back of your mind, and then consider how your goals are going to align with the different sort of tools and options that each of these platforms offer. Has Wordle taken over LinkedIn like it has Twitter? Anyone here posting their Wordle scores on LinkedIn? Today's was a little tough. Yesterday's was a little tough too. Speaking of Twitter, where Wordle is often exploding, let's start with a super quick overview of Twitter. So Twitter is a social network that's been around since 2006, so it is established as a social network. According to a recent Twitter report, the platform has 100 million daily active users and 500 million tweets are sent per day, so it is highly used. The primary sort of purpose of this platform is to connect people, allow them to share their thoughts with a wider audience. On Twitter, you can find stories and commentary on the day's news, on current events, and you can also follow and connect with people or brands in niche or wide communities. And something that I think sets it apart from other networking sites is that it encourages brevity. You only have 280 characters per tweet, although you can string them together as threads, which might make it seem sort of counterintuitive as a place for academics, but there is a very large academic community on Twitter. The platform has grown and changed pretty dramatically in the past 10 years, but in my opinion, two characteristics that have always been kind of baked into Twitter's DNA, and part of what makes Twitter so special is that it is highly searchable. In a matter of seconds, you can search the entire history of public Twitter posts, and we'll take a closer look at that search function in a bit. But I also want you to shift the way you think about both Twitter and LinkedIn. They are not just social networks, they are highly searchable search engines in their own right. And knowing how to take advantage of those searches is going to help produce some pretty valuable results for you, both as someone who is interested in consuming or producing content on there. And something else I think is great is that it provides access to other users. Twitter in particular essentially offers users access to anyone else with a public Twitter account with very little barrier to entry. You don't need to be friends with someone to chat with them. Any Twitter user can essentially start a conversation with any other Twitter user. And that's kind of unique and special and something that can be taken advantage of. And so for those reasons, I think Twitter is a special place that can be very valuable as you're looking to grow your network as an academic. And in my opinion, it is the best place to join local, national, global conversations. And it's great for connecting with peers, thought leaders, students, policymakers, relevant organizations, and nearly any person or entity with an account. And there are many. So I wanted to start with a tool that I'm especially fond of on Twitter. And some of the common gripes that I often hear about Twitter as a platform are that it shows you tweets out of order when it would be a better experience chronological. It shows you tweets from people that you don't follow and aren't interested in, and it is riddled with ads. And in my opinion, lists sort of solve all of these problems. So if you just use your main home feed to check in on the people and organizations that you follow, your Twitter can kind of become a hectic space and feel a little bit overcrowded. So Twitter lists are a fantastic way to keep your Twitter organized and focus exclusively on the content you want to see. So you can create your own Twitter lists by visiting this little Post-it note looking icon that I have circled in red here. And from there, you can create either public or private lists that consist just of the Twitter followers that you are looking to follow. And it puts their tweets in a chronological order. There are no ads in this feed, and it essentially only shows you the things that you say you want to see. So I utilize lists in a few different ways. I have lists for things that I've created, like one for higher ed social media professionals, one that's just for content creators who inspire me. And then I also have some that are just for fun and just for me. Like I've got one for hockey people who I want to check out when I want to know what's going on in the hockey world. So you can use these for all different types of ways. And a little shout out coming up. Ooh. My screen frozen. There we go. So you can also subscribe to lists that other people have created, such as our very own Derek Breff. Vanderbilt has some great lists that I'd like to plug to help you connect with other people and organizations from across campus. So I recommend checking out those and following them as well. But one great way to find new lists is by going to the profile of someone who you really like or find valuable and clicking the button with those 3 dots on their profile. And this will pull up all of their public lists and all of the lists that they have subscribed to. So you can search through the people who they have listed as people that they are interested in following. And oftentimes you can sort of follow those breadcrumbs down the line to create lists of your own for the people that you find valuable. And then even further than that, once you are looking at someone's lists, you can also click on that icon in the top right of the screen on that second graphic there. And that's going to take you to lists that that person is included on, which is also a great way to find and connect with relevant people. And so when you start adding people to your lists, you don't necessarily need to be following them. You can keep up with them just by adding them to your lists. But if you are really looking to grow your network, it is good to follow people, and even people that you don't really know who maybe operate in a similar space as you. A professional person who has a public Twitter account is fair game to follow. I think that a professional person who lists themselves as public, that in some ways suggests that they are open to being connected with. Whereas on Facebook, it is a much more personal network. So it might be sort of odd to friend or connect with someone that you do not know there. But on Twitter, that is not really the case. That same weirdness doesn't really exist. So if someone is presenting themselves as a professional, they're public, they have themselves listed as a public person on Twitter, and they're talking about content that you're interested in, go ahead and follow them. And then gaining followers in return is going to take some time, especially if you are a new Twitter user or you're not someone who's engaging regularly. But academics are generally pretty approachable on Twitter. So reach out to them, connect, follow, use that really social element of social media. Academics also tend to be pretty discerning with who they will follow back. So if you do not get a follow back, that's okay. It's probably nothing personal. Just focus on creating strong content, using Twitter as a conversation tool, engaging with relevant people back and forth, having those conversations, and your followers will grow organically over time, but it does take time. And a plug for a few important accounts from within our community that I especially recommend are the Provost, the Chancellor, and the main Vanderbilt account. These are great ways to stay up to date with the latest and what's happening around campus, and also great accounts to connect and engage with and find other community members who are on Twitter through the things that we are tweeting on these accounts and through the people that we are promoting and the conversations that we're having there. Okay, moving. Yes.
I'll jump in and just, I could say lots, but I did find it very interesting that our still new provost, Sibel Raver, she also has her own kind of professional Twitter account. She's good at Twitter. Like I noticed from the very beginning, she's very active and engaged on Twitter. I was really impressed at how she navigated that. I haven't always known administrators who actually did much themselves on Twitter, but she seems to see it as a really useful way to connect to the community.
Absolutely. She totally gets it. She is a great role model if you are looking for inspiration of ways to tweet, what a professional academic voice sounds like. Absolutely. Provost Raver is fantastic on Twitter and a great role model to check out. Yeah, thank you. I agree. Absolutely. All right. So moving on to trending topics. One great way to get your voice and your expertise out there is to look each day at what's trending and look for opportunities where you can contribute. So seek out those trending topics that fit in with your area of expertise or your key messages or just content that you are passionate about, and try and take advantage by sharing things like relevant work, past articles, relevant research, or just your own commentary that could add value to that topic in some way. Twitter makes it easy to see what's trending. It is featured pretty prominently on the sidebar of the website. It's got its own tab in the app. And this is a screenshot from what was trending just this morning. So when you're inside the trending topics, if you click that gear icon in the top right, that's going to pull up the option to narrow or expand your trending topics to show you what's trending locally, nationally, on the state level, or even globally. So play around with that a bit to see what's going on in different parts of the world. And again, looking for places where you might be able to chime in and contribute. And something else I want to call out in the trending page is the For You trending section, which shows you conversations and topics that are popular in maybe more niche communities that Twitter thinks that you specifically will be interested in. And their algorithms are pretty good, and it only gets better the more that you use Twitter. So the more that you engage and tweet and follow and grow your network, the more refined that For You section is going to be, which is going to help you connect with those relevant conversations sooner, easier, faster. And I mentioned that Twitter is a powerful search engine. If you have ever searched for a keyword or a hashtag on Twitter, you've likely used the quick search function, which typically shows you what Twitter considers to be the top tweets based on their own kind of internal algorithm. But it's usually popular tweets that they think most closely mirror what you're looking for. And while these are often great results, there are ways to get much more out of this Twitter search. So there are a few other tools you can use, starting with in the search bar here, you'll notice that tweets are broken down by top, which is the default I just mentioned, but can also be sorted by latest, which puts them chronologically, or it can be sorted by people, which shows you the accounts who are talking about or associated with the word or phrase you're searching for. So you can see that if you search Vanderbilt and go to people, the first account you're going to see is the Vanderbilt account. You can also narrow results down to just see photos or just see videos about the topic that you're searching for. And this is also a good reminder as you're creating your social media bios and thinking about the words and phrases you're using as you make tweets and as you're describing yourself. That keyword searching is a big way that users discover new content and relevant people to follow. So be thoughtful about those keywords that you're using. And now one way you can take this search to the next level is by using Twitter's advanced search. So advanced search gives you a whole host of additional options that allow you to really narrow down what you're looking for and get very specific about the results. So you can narrow down words and phrases. You can exclude tweets with keywords that might be skewing results. You can set it so that you only see popular tweets with a minimum number of likes or replies or retweets. This might help you find popular content. You can also narrow down your search by date. So if you only wanted to see tweets about microbiology that were posted between between February and March of 2012. That is a thing that you could do. You can also search for words, keywords, and hashtags within a user's profile. So an example of what a custom advanced search might look like. So an example of this in action, maybe you want to see every time Vanderbilt has tweeted about the basic sciences lab to table events. So what you would do is you'd plug in your keyword of that lab to table, and if you were interested in maybe only seeing tweets that were posted this year, you can plug in the date range that you're looking for. You also wanted to note that you only want to see posts that were tweeted by Vanderbilt U. So in that, from these accounts, you put Vanderbilt. And then maybe you're only interested in tweets and events that resonated with our audience. So you can set that to filter out any tweets that had, for example, less than 10 likes. And then just like that, you have a fully customized search result. And there's an example of sort of what it looks like on the right there. And so this is a really great tool for researching topics. It is great for sifting through a user's profile to see the ways they talk about certain topics or issues. It can also help you get really specific about the things that you are looking for on Twitter. So big fan of the Twitter Advanced Search. Next thing I want to talk about is Twitter chats. Let me know in the chat if any of you have engaged in Twitter chats recently. I know they used to be very, very popular, but are sort of waning. But there are many that are still really active and engage weekly even still. If you don't know what I'm talking about, a Twitter chat is where a group of users meet at a predetermined time to discuss a certain topic using a designated hashtag for each tweet. So typically a host or a monitor will pose 4 to 5 questions that serve as prompts, inviting the audience members to respond, and then people participating in the chat are generally encouraged to share answers, to search through the hashtag, and interact with other people who are participating. They usually last about an hour, and it is essentially a virtual networking event around a specific topic. It is a great way to network, to meet people in your field or in adjacent fields, and to just find interesting people to follow or add to your lists. And as I mentioned, these admittedly not as popular as they used to be, but chats like this example, #2pencilchat, is a chat for educators and professors in the education space that takes place weekly and has a ton of active participants still. So if you can find and tap into those communities, Twitter chats can be a really great way to expand your network. And one way to find Twitter chats that are relevant for your area, the resource tweetreports.com collects and organizes Twitter chats. It is by no means comprehensive, but it gives you a lot of different options and you can kind of get a sense of what is out there. Yeah, Derek says, I never plan to participate, but sometimes I'm on when they start and get drawn in. Yeah, following people who are in those networks who are connected, sometimes these things just kind of come up on your account, and participate where you can and add value where you can. It's not really a formal thing. You don't need to sign up. You can just show up and start tweeting. Low barrier to entry. That's what I love about Twitter. So a couple of tips and best practices, just some general things to keep in mind. Avoid starting a tweet with an @ mention unless you are replying to a tweet or directing your post to just one person. Otherwise, Twitter considers that a semi-private conversation, which means only people who follow you and the person whose username you started the tweet with can see it. So avoid limiting your reach in that way. One kind of workaround is to put a period in front of the @ and Twitter will no longer think it's a private conversation. Avoid overusing hashtags. Look for the key hashtags that your community is using. One great way to find the hashtags that you should be using is by visiting the accounts of either peers in your field who you admire or professional organizations who are tweeting about those topics regularly. But avoid using too many hashtags. It can look a bit spammy or even a bit desperate at times. So I recommend looking for role models in your field and seeing not just which hashtags they use, but also how many they use. I would say 1 or 2 usually get the job done without being too much. And then if you're going to use a hashtag, make sure to check it first to see what the conversations are like within that hashtag. You want to make sure that you're using it correctly, that it's a legitimate and established hashtag, and that you'll have something to contribute that either hasn't already been said or can add or further that conversation. And then also don't forget to show your personality through things like photos, observations, slice of life. I always say that you wouldn't want to hang out with someone who was only ever talking about work. And that's true on Twitter as well. So look for ways that you can express yourself in a way that shares a little bit about who you are beyond your work experience as well, if you feel comfortable. Okay, moving on to LinkedIn. So LinkedIn is a network. Yes.
I have one question, and
yeah.
Would it be okay if other people ask a question or two?
Absolutely, yeah. Jump in if you got them. I've got space at the end, but we can do them here too.
Okay, so one of the things, well, you mentioned show a little personality. So I see some academics have a lot of political tweets, and some have a few, and some have none.
Yeah.
In your position, what do you have advice that you would give for academics who would like to show that side of their personality?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that comes down to very much a personal decision. I would say keep in mind that you are always representing all of the entities and organizations that you are a part of, including Vanderbilt. This is also a good reminder to, if you don't already, include in your bio the phrase "opinions are my own," so that you are denoting that you are not speaking on behalf of Vanderbilt University. But that is very much a personal choice that comes down to, are you prepared to deal with negative blowback if there are people who are looking to start fights with you in your replies? Is that part of the work that you do, in which case it is inevitable that you will be tweeting about those political issues? And really, is it something that you feel comfortable diving into in a public way? Another great reminder is to imagine that every audience in the world could potentially have access to your tweets, from your students to your parents to your colleagues to your employers. So think about all of the people who could possibly come across this tweet, and make sure that you can stand by it, you're proud of it, it represents your true and authentic feelings, and it's not going to get you into any trouble.
Thanks.
Yeah.